When you get into language learning, you'll come across a lot of new information and you'll also forget a lot of information too. Many people get so upset at themselves because they forget what they've learned. It might be because they have an ultra competitive personality. It could also be because of a teacher they had when they were younger who insulted them for forgetting. Whatever the case, there's no reason to become upset at yourself for forgetting. When talking about learning vocabulary, forgetting is actually a part of learning. You have to accept this fact. You can think about it as if it were a person. There's what we'll call the first contact. At this stage, the new material is just a stranger for you. You don't know much about it. There's just been an introduction. However, over time, if you have repeated contact with it, it'll become familiar to you. It's no longer a stranger to you. Over time, you'll go through 3 stages. We have the stranger, the acquaintance, and the friend. The vocabulary that you learn is a stranger to you, and then it becomes an acquaintance through your repeated contact with it. Just because it's an acquaintance doesn't mean you're close to it or committed to it, but in time it becomes a friend. When you need it, it's there for you. So now the vocabulary is yours. You've committed it to memory, and you know what it means and how it works. So just remember that we have with our vocabulary 3 stages, which are the stranger, acquaintance, and friend. We have the first contact. The word or the vocabulary is new for you. You don't know it. It's completely different. But over time, as you have repeated contact with it, continuous contact with it, it's no longer a stranger. It's an acquaintance. And then over time, it becomes a friend, and the vocabulary is now in your control, and you can use it as will. It takes time, but there's nothing wrong with forgetting. We learn, we forget, and then we remember over time. So I mentioned forgetting and told you that it's part of the learning experience. But in the case of vocabulary, how much exposure do you need before it finally really sticks with you? So there's no real set number for it, but estimates for necessary exposure range from at least 7 to up to 17 times. So that means that if you learn the word dog for the first time, for example, maybe you won't remember it after the first time, second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, or sixth time. It's after the 7th exposure that you might start to remember it. But the estimates range from 7 to up to 17 times of exposure before a word really sticks with you and commits with you. And when I say exposure, that doesn't mean that you drill the word 17 times in one day and that you should expect to know it for the rest of your life. Exposure will come from many sources. Maybe the first time you see the word, it's from a word list. And then the second time you come across the word, you come across it in a book. The third exposure might come from a TV show. The fourth time you might see it in a textbook or in a text message, and so forth. So you shouldn't be angry at yourself when you forget the meaning. Again, I want to keep reminding you about this. Don't be angry at yourself if you forget the meaning of a word. If you've just learned it, you've just learned it. It's new for you. You simply need more exposure, and over time, the word will begin to stick with you and become part of what you have access to in your vocabulary.